Hello and welcome to this week's episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman. On today's show, we're going to be answering a very specific question because lots of practice owners think they have a revenue problem. But today's guest would say, you don't have a revenue problem. Mr. Arron Bennett has spent the last 8 years providing answers for practices and businesses like ours. He works with service businesses doing anywhere between $2 and $20 million a year. And he's going to show us exactly where your money is leaking and why you're not collecting all the money that you think and know you should be. Welcome to Season 3 of For the Love of Chiropractic. Season 1 has 60 episodes of practice management tips to help you build the best practice possible. Season 2, 3 keys of my success, 50 interviews with the most successful chiropractors from around the world. Season 3, resources for your success. So let's listen up and learn how to build a great business. So I had the opportunity to catch up with Mr. Arron Bennett by phone. Arron, are you there?
Yes, Doc, I'm here.
It is so good to be chatting with you. So, Arron, before we started recording, we jumped right in and started talking about something that you are, frankly, I'll say world famous for, having been featured in Forbes, Business Leader, and USA Today. You have a framework that you call the 60-15-15 standard, and that talks about how businesses should run. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the system is really simple. We always want to be at about 60% gross margin. We want to spend 15% of our revenue into general and administrative costs, i.e. what keeps the lights on, and then 15% into our sales and marketing buckets. So that just allows us to have a high level overview if we're looking at our profit and loss and go, okay, are we benchmarked correctly? And are we going to be profitable enough through the years? But it also then allows you to look at it and go, okay, I need to get better in my cost of goods sold, or I need to get better in my general administrative, or my sales and marketing function isn't delivering as much as it should. It allows you to kind of start from there and look through your P&L and identify quickly where the gaps are.
I love that. So, for us chiropractors, what you're really asking us to do is to take off our doctoring hat and put on our business owner hat, and then really look at the company that we own, that we are running, and then you have obviously a responsibility to run it responsibly and profitably.
Yes.
So I know one of the things that you say is that P&L statements, profit and loss statements, are built wrong. Can you explain some of that?
Yeah, so if you're looking at your profit and loss and it says revenue and there's no cost of goods sold, or there's some cost of goods sold, but it doesn't have the doctor's salary, or it doesn't have our, if you've got RNs or other chiropractors in the company, it doesn't have those salaries in the cost of goods sold line, then that's the first problem. You need to see how much it costs you to deliver your service to the patients. And if it's under 60%, or it's not broken out correctly, and say half of the staff that you have is under general administrative, or you don't have general administrative and sales and marketing dialed out so that you can see that, you're immediately positioned to just do a tax return and not actually make decisions in your organization. And then you're not able to see where the missing pieces are right from the jump.
That makes so much sense. So if I'm a doc in practice and I'm the only doc there, I pay myself a reasonable salary because that's what the United States Internal Revenue Service requires.
Yep.
So you're saying that needs to be factored in, because there's some doctors who just say, no, I just show up and I do my work, and and then what I don't spend for the other stuff, paying bills, paying staff, paying rent, well, that's all my profit.
Yes. So it needs to be in the cost of goods sold line, because say you're a solo practitioner, you have a building, you're a solo practitioner, and you're not at 60% margins because your salary is, say, $100,000 a year, and you bring in $200,000 or $300,000. And let's say we're at I don't know, 50%. Well, it means we may have a pricing problem. We might have a packaging problem, or we might have an efficiency problem. We're spending too much time with patients, so we can't see enough people in a day to make it so that we can get to that 60%. Or our pricing is incorrect, assuming that it's not insurance. If it's insurance, that's a different ballgame completely.
Sure.
But then it'll be an efficiency problem because you're not turning enough people through your organization. And it's just the snapshot you're able to see and be like, okay, well, there's something going on here. And it's kind of like a diagnostic tool to then dig deeper into your organization and go, okay, there's something here with efficiency. Or it could be a sales and marketing problem under the hood, and you're not marketing efficiently enough to be able to get enough revenue in for the salary that you're running currently.
That makes so much sense. So I want to back up for just a second because you just quickly glossed over basically the three pieces. One was, and I didn't even get to write them down fast enough. One was spending too much time with patients. One was pricing, and what was the third piece?
Packaging.
It was packaging. So what do you mean by packaging in a chiropractic practice? How would that apply?
You're giving too much service, and which ends up being time, but you're giving too much service to that one person. So you're doing the chiropractic portion, but then you're keeping them on the beds a little bit longer, you're icing them up, or you're using the TENS unit or whatever it may be after the fact, and then you're keeping the client there for too long, which is decreasing the amount of profit that you're making per person.
That makes total sense. And for a lot of chiropractors, and certainly there was a time in my life and career when I would be guilty of this also. I'll talk to doctors about your problem is you have oral diarrhea. You can't shut up. You're talking to patients about all sorts of things going on in your own life, or maybe it's the sports team, or maybe it's politics,
Yep.
God forbid, in the office, and you're not providing health care. You're not helping the person in any way, shape, or form. Now, you have a relationship with them, but the fact that you're standing there having a pleasant conversation about, how your local team did in yesterday's game, and there's 2 or 3 people sitting there waiting, they're not amused that you're having a polite conversation with a patient who wants to get out of there also and get on with their day.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So, and that's something that so many docs just overlook and don't even begin to think about. So I want to move on to something else that you and I had begun to discuss, which is you talk about that revenue is a lagging indicator and what you should be looking at instead.
Yeah, so you should be looking at from a marketing perspective, because the first thing is, okay, we're looking at revenue, we're looking at COGS. We should be looking at all of the functions before a person comes in. So if you're spending money on sales and marketing, you should be able to get a 3-to-1 LTV to CAC, which is basically, it costs you, say, $100 to acquire a customer. So get a person to walk through the front door, book an appointment, whatever it may be. And then you make $300 over the course of the lifetime of that relationship before they leave churn out or leave the company. So you always want to kind of have that 3-to-1 ratio if you're spending money on marketing, and it's not just word of mouth and referrals and those types of things. So you should be looking at, all right, how many bookings am I getting from spending the sale, like that money on sales and marketing? And then how many people I've got walking in, and how many of those convert to longer term paying customers or patients.
Right. So you're talking about your cost of acquisition per patient, as that then relates to what we sometimes call the CVA, the case visit average, how much any one patient is spending with your practice.
Yeah, over their lifetime, effectively.
Right. That makes sense. That makes a ton of sense. Can you talk about how sometimes a larger practice feels harder to run than a smaller one?
Yes. So it's always going to be harder because obviously more money, more problems. You have to really understand your metrics. So like breaking it out into the 60, 15, 15 allows you then to look at your LTV to CAC. It allows you to look at like how much it costs us to get a person to schedule an appointment or walk in the front door. It's always kind of those core KPIs that lead you to whatever revenue target that you want. So if you come in at the start of the year and you say, I want to make $1 million or $2 million or whatever your growth is going to be, you have to be able to dial it back to that sales and marketing engine and then extrapolate to those things before revenue. And that's going to allow you to get to that revenue number. If you don't do that, you're kind of throwing spaghetti on the wall and you're hoping that revenue is going to grow. You have to tie it. Business is a living, breathing organism. Everything kind of flows from sales and marketing to above what's above revenue, which is your leading indicators, to revenue. Then you're going to have the delivery costs, which is all of the people to do the work. And then you have your general administrative, like your support staff and those types of things. So the next thing you have to look at from a general administrative perspective is your labor efficiency ratio. How much does it cost to have that person there? And how much per person are we making? So if you have 5 staff and it costs you XYZ a month, well, then you should be making 4 times the amount of salary they have to make it so that you're at the right labor efficiency ratio.
So let's revisit that for just a second. And I'm just going to throw a number out. By in no way, shape, or form is this, meant to be a recommendation of what to pay people. So we as chiropractors will hire assistants, and we call them chiropractic assistants. And in today's market, maybe you're paying someone, $20 an hour as a chiropractic assistant. Do the math for me about what their productivity needs to look like to work into your formula the way that it should.
So if you're paying $20 an hour, just bear with me, I'm grabbing a spreadsheet. You're paying them about $40,800 a year.
Sounds about right.
So you would need to have them help you manage $163,200 in revenue. Now, if you have your salary as well, let's say you're bringing in $100,000,
sure,
with a year. So you would need combined between the chiropractors. The total revenue that you should be managing is $563,200 with a $40,800 assistant or chiropractic assistant and a salary of $100,000 for the chiropractor.
Okay, so since you have the spreadsheet there, and I hope we're not going too deep into the woods.
No, you're fine.
So if the average chiropractor is seeing about 100 visits a week, based on 50 weeks of the year, what would those numbers boil back to charging per visit?
So we've got, they're managing 50 weeks. They would need to be bringing in $11,264 a week to make that happen.
All right.
I believe that's
right. And so 11,000 and divide that by 100 visits. So it works out to be just over $100 a visit.
$112.64.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for doing that. I'm sorry to have you pull at the back of the envelope. But I think those numbers really drive it home for a lot of people. All right. So as we keep talking about some other things that you and I wanted to cover, can you talk about how chiropractors can effectively reduce their tax bill?
Mm-hmm. So it really depends on the cash position. So making sure, one, if you're doing about $70,000 of net income a year, you want to be an S corporation. Mm-hmm. So that's the very first thing. That gets around self-employment taxes because that kind of lowers your tax bill by 15.3% on that $70,000.
Wow.
The next thing is using things like small things like the Augusta strategy. The Augusta strategy allows you by law to rent your home. One, and this isn't tax advice or anything like that, but it allows you to rent your home if you own it to the organization up to 14 times a year. So you can get, depending on where you live, anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 out of the business tax-free by simply renting it to your home. Now, the caveat is that you need to ensure that you're using this as planning days. So this is how I always do it. the days that you're doing these planning days, you cannot see anyone. You have to make sure that you're looking at your marketing metrics, your sales metrics, your finance metrics, finding efficiencies, looking at all of your operation. So the IRS always incentivizes behaviors. And it's basically incentivizing you to look at the business and make sure that you're doing planning for the next month. So if you kind of have it on a monthly scale, it's only going to be 12, and then you add in an extra couple of days through the year to do more planning for maybe next year. Maybe you have a company like Office Day where you can take everyone out for lunch and everyone helps you kind of plan if you're a larger organization. But it's making sure that you're doing that planning and actually looking at your profit and loss and your metrics and those types of things. And you have to document that on your calendar, because your calendar allows you to support that position, as well as have notes about what you talked about, i.e. what you planned, and then making sure that you actually start to enact those plans and start treating it like a business. That's the easiest way for a company to start ensuring that they're doing planning every month.
All right. So what you just said is absolutely brilliant. We had a guest months ago in the first part of the calendar year who talked about the Augusta strategy, and I'd never heard of it before. And specifically what he had said was, if you were going to have a staff event, a strategic planning event with your staff, team building, and you wanted to have that event, on the patio around a swimming pool as you're talking about issues in the practice. What he had said specifically was you could go to the local country club and say, hey, what would you charge me to rent this many square feet or this area of your patio for me to have X number of people for a meeting? And they would then email, the estimate, and you now have proof of what it costs in your area. And then instead have it in your own, have it by your own pool that's in your own backyard and do that. And as he was saying, that's specifically, for a staff event where you bring the whole team together or parts of the team. But if I heard you correctly just now, you were saying if I'm sitting in my home office and just working through the statistics and planning and working on the business, doing business planning for the month, the quarter, the next year, that I can write that off also. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
Wow.
As long as you have a contract between the organization and your home, you've got a reasonable rate. You have to you use Peerspace, PEER-space.com or something similar, and then you're able to see what a reasonable rent would be for the local area. But it's just like as if you were going away and you're kind of shutting yourself into an office somewhere across town to do a strategic planning day. That's exactly what you're doing. It's kind of the incentivization to ensure that you're doing your strategic planning days. And then you actually have to pay yourself whatever that rate is. You don't just put it into the books and make it fictitious. The money has to move.
Got it. That makes such sense. So it's passing from the corporate pocket into the personal pocket.
Yeah, and then it shows up as rent. You kind of want to put it as another expense so you don't ruin your P&L, but it comes in as like an other expense, and then you make sure you've got contracts, you make sure you've got a reasonable rate, you make sure you actually do the work and like detail everything out the way that you're supposed to. But it is that incentivization to go ahead and do those types of days.
So I'm curious, I know we're far down the rabbit hole in this.
Sure.
How many hours do you need to spend doing that in order for this to qualify? Obviously, it's more than a half hour, but you're probably not putting in an 8 or 10 hour a day. Also,
you should be able to do 6 to 8. 6 to 8 hours. You should have it on your calendar. You should have it structured by the hour. So that's kind of like your documentation of like from 9 to 10, I'm going to look at all my financial data. From 10 to 11, I'm going to go down the sales and marketing rabbit hole, and then I'm going to have lunch at whatever time, and then I'm going to continue to work through each department within the organization.
I love that. That is absolutely brilliant. That is just absolutely brilliant. Okay, let's talk about something else that you and I had said we wanted to talk about. Explain to me why balance sheet protection kills growth.
It can kill growth if we're trying to not Like if we're just protecting cash. So there's companies out there, I say 60, 15, 15. If you can work out how to get 3-to-1, 5-to-1, 6-to-1 CAC to LTV, we want to potentially utilize that cash as aggressively as possible to grow the company. And so if we know we can put $1 in and we're going to get $3 of gross profit, so after delivery, $3 of gross profit back, we can scale this very, very aggressively as long as our customer acquisition cost payback period, and that's, I'm going a little bit down the rabbit hole, but is 30 to 60 days. So that's the thing is if you know your metrics, you can scale a company super aggressively. But if you don't know your metrics, you're not going to be able to. And then you have to kind of fall back into protecting the balance sheet. But you want to make sure that you're not just protecting cash. We want to make sure that we're utilizing it effectively and making sure that we can grow the company to an enterprise value where we're going to actually be able to have a saleable asset, get the owner out of the day-to-day, be able to bring in other chiropractors and chiropractic assistants, all of those types of people.
Okay, that makes total sense. Now, something I've heard you say before is that there are 5 numbers that'll predict your year. Can you go over those metrics?
Gross margin, customer acquisition cost payback period, your labor efficiency, and your net income or your total profitability.
I love that. It is just so crystal clear and blunt and to the point. It's black and white, and it makes such total sense. In your intro sheet, something that I had read that you said you have founded your firm and your life around, and then you just casually rolled off your lips a few minutes ago, that you have built your firm around one simple question. And it's something that chiropractors rarely ask themselves. And that question is this business scalable? I think so many chiropractors, just try and get through the day to day, and do I have enough patients coming in, today, this week, this month, this year, so that I'm running a profit, and okay, so and then can I run my life? Can I get my kids through college? Whatever their expenses are, that they don't look at the bigger picture of, am I building a business that is scalable? How many offices do I want, or how many doctors do I want in the one office? And then ultimately, is it sellable?
Yeah. There's a lot of chiropractic firms that are just shutting down as people start to retire because they built it without it actually positioning around a saleable asset. It's got too many dependencies on either the owner being the lead chiropractor, or it has a key employee and only one of them, and now they can't sell it, or they're reliant on a vendor, or they're reliant on one large customer. There's a lot of different variables under the hood, but we have to be mindful that if you aren't planning today for those things into the future, and you aren't systematically moving towards that exit, you may not be able to sell it, because no one wants to buy a job.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I once heard if you're not building a business that is sellable, all you've done is create a job for yourself.
Yeah. And it's the person who is like your boss is the craziest person out there. And I'm an owner as well, so I resonate with that.
Yeah, sometimes we all work for a lunatic and we're the boss. Yep. Exactly.
That's the one. Yeah.
Oh my God. I love that. All right. So I've got to ask a personal question now. You have been so gracious with your time and information. How could a chiropractor work with you? What does that look like?
Yeah. So the very first thing we do is we look at the company as a whole. So we do a free leak check on every company we work with. We go in, we identify, is there any tax savings under the hood that we could identify? Is there areas for growth? And then we kind of look at it and say, all right, you're leaving this much net income on the table. This is how much money you could be saving in taxes that you're not. And then it's on the website, www.bennettfinancials.com, and it's all free. So we do that, and then we do a full scale ready assessment, free tax plan, free diagnosis of the business, as well as an enterprise value report to help you go and either do it yourself or working with us into the future.
That is absolutely beautiful. Mr. Arron Bennett, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, making the time, as I said, sharing your knowledge and wisdom. This has been absolutely fantastic. And again, I genuinely want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
No problem, Robert. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll chat soon.
All right, thanks, sir.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, and that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.